You're tuned in to the only all sports talk network in the Middle East, IsraelSportsRadio.com.
All right, and welcome to the Beltway boys. It's been a while, but my name is Andy Gershman, and I'm once again with the deepest voice in all of Baltimore sports, Brian Hoffman. How's it going, Brian?
Andy, it is pretty good. I mean, especially on a Tuesday morning, right after a Monday night win where, a certain pretty amazing field goal happens. But it's also really cool to be on the radio with you again, Israel Sports Radio. It's awesome. It's been a couple of weeks. I am just like pouring at the seams with like football right now, and it's getting to that real interesting time of the year.
I know it is. It's crunch time, 2 games left in the season. Most of the fantasy seasons are wrapped up next week. We'll get to that a little bit. But, we always start around the Beltway, and since there's a dysfunction in the air in Washington, I think I'll let you go first in Baltimore. I mean, you must have a sore leg just watching that game last night.
I give it an analogy of if a movie were to be made, a sports movie. It's one of those dramatic kicks you would see in one of those kind of some flick like that. I equate the Indiana Jones of one of those doors dramatically closing. You don't think the guy is going to get through the door, but he does. That ball found a way when it first went up. People were thinking maybe it might be to the right, then it could be possibly short. Tucker actually from the University of Texas, he is a Longhorn. They've been in the news themselves, which is kind of interesting. And it's funny because this week Tucker actually was backing up his former coach there in Texas. So what a way kind of to even more publicize, his alma mater there. But this kick barely getting in. This is right after Prater hits the 64-yarder, but that's in the thin air in Denver. That also wasn't a kick that was deciding a game. And also not one of these situations, you have some of these kicks where the game is tied and you have a chance to win the game. But this is one of those situations where you're actually down. It's either break it, make it or break it. That's it. And especially with the Ravens, not just make it or break it as far as the game is concerned, but make it and break it with your season. Because with the Miami Dolphins winning all these games somehow, the Ravens lose there, and they're outside of the playoffs looking in, and now they are still in control of their own destiny.
Yeah, it was amazing. And you had to have that feeling when you're watching this unfold that when Calvin Johnson drops the ball, I don't think he would have been inbound anyway if he would have caught the ball for the 2-point conversion. I mean, let's think about the 2-point conversion over the last, few games here. Washington goes for 2 points, misses it. You had it in the Dallas Green Bay game. You had it there. But, the announcer, I can't remember which one said it. It might have been Gruden said, right when he missed it, he said, that's going to come back to haunt them. I saw somebody post, why don't more teams run for the 2-point conversion, especially when you got a guy like Reggie Bush, even a little toss off to the side, let him sweep in, something like that. But, it seems that the passing into the end zone on a 2-point conversion, there's too many bodies back there, isn't working.
I am a huge fan of John Gruden. He tells it how he is. He's kind of edgy during the game. And the thing that he was saying right off the bat was that there should be some kind of an option play with Stafford, who's actually a mobile, one of the more mobile. He's not no Cam Newton or Kaepernick, but he's one of the more mobile quarterbacks there, and he could have had a opportunity to do some kind of an option situation, you're right, with at least a run option. Yeah, I always say, and I think you've heard me say it on Israel Sports Radio, where I love, whether it be on a 2-point conversion or a big third down, I love teams that throw up the fade, because that fade pass, it is Calvin Johnson, so the chances go up a little bit. Or a lot. But usually when that fade is thrown, I actually, as a fan of the defense in that situation, I like that because statistically it's not a huge success there. It's a very pinpoint pass that needs to be made. Not every quarterback is Peyton Manning. Stafford was certainly no Peyton Manning last night.
I agree 100%. You're still there, right, Brian?
Yes.
Okay. He said, why don't they go for a quarterback draw? And, I'm not sure what exactly happened, but that was the call that was drawn up, and so it goes. And like you said, they control their own destiny. They have a home game with New England, and then they have Cincinnati, which could be the game that determines the playoff future for the Baltimore Ravens. Now, of course, the playoff future for the Washington Redskins may have to come in a different season, or actually it will have to come in a different season, and who knows, it could come with a different head coach. Around here, all the talk is what's going to happen with the Shanahans. I just read something earlier where Mike Shanahan says he is not going to resign. I have a feeling you're going to see Haslett gone and Kyle Shanahan gone, but Mike Shanahan's still around to deal with RG3 and Dan Snyder. What are you hearing up in Baltimore? Anything about this crazy story as it's unfolding?
Well, I just think it's interesting, what's going on with RG3 as to how many people are talking about it being a bad thing that he's missing out on the last 3 games of the season. I think it's actually not a bad move. In my opinion, the guy obviously has been, even players, colleagues around the league have said he's not himself. So why, in a situation in which you're obviously trying to rebuild for the upside of next year, you possibly throw him out there?
Right. I mean, it makes no sense. And Kirk Cousins, he's just being put out there for trade bait. They're hoping that some Matt Flynn, some Kevin Cobb, some Scott Mitchell, type of thing will happen, and Cousins will prove that he is a pocket passer. He can make it, do well in the league, and hopefully they'll get some of those draft picks back. Remember, they have no draft picks in the first round for the next couple of years, especially this year. They're going to end up giving the Rams probably the second or third pick overall based on their record, and it's just, there was some criticism over the trying for a 2-point and tie or win. I mean, I think it was the right move for Shanahan. I think he has to go for the win there. I don't understand why any Redskin fan would not agree with that. I mean, what do you care if you're, 3-11 or 4-10 or whatever it comes out to be, my math, fuzzy math. But, that it was interesting go there. Around the rest of the NFC East, of course, my Cowboys didn't fare too well there in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, Andy, I'm sorry that, you're not too happy this week. I mean, hey, sometimes you go on Facebook and you're like, wow, I couldn't be happier. All 10 of my teams won, including, the Boston Bruins, and you go through, 3 other hockey teams, 6 football teams, 4 baseball teams, and a partridge in a pear tree.
Yeah, not this week. I think every partridge and pear tree lost.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, but statistics got to catch up with you sometimes.
Eventually. Well, the Cowboys, of course, turned back into the Cowboys. I told people from the beginning this was an 8-8 team, and I'm looking pretty strong there with 8-8, which is not going to get them in the playoffs. Of course, like your Ravens, if they win out, they win the division, they'll be okay and make it into the playoffs and lose a home game, which, of course, you know what happens then in Jerry world. Jerry thinks everything's fine because they made the playoffs. So that could be the white elephant in the room there. One thing I want to ask you about is perception, because, we athletes and sports fans have an interesting relationship. Tony Romo throws a bad 2 interceptions there in the second half and gets killed for it, not only by the media, by his own coach, who said he audibled off of a play and threw the ball, which was picked. You hear more about that than you will about Stafford throwing his late pick. You hear more about that than Eli Manning throwing his 5 picks to lead the league with 25 picks. I don't know about Stafford. Stafford gets a true, gets the easy pass. Eli, I guess, because you have two Super Bowl rings, you get a pass.
Oh yeah.
What's going on there?
Well, with the Romo situation, I really don't believe it's all his fault. The thing that's the most tickling to me is that Jerry Jones says halfway through the season that he's going to stick with his head coach next season. That is the most surprising thing that absolutely doesn't make sense to me, because I think some of the, when a team, comes back by such a deficit, I don't think a quarterback throwing a couple interceptions late in the game, when you're up by 3 scores, is the biggest reason you're losing that game. I think the coach got to take the brunt of that, and then it's Jerry Jones going around saying, "Yeah, the coach is going to come back." Who says such a rash thing?
Right. It doesn't even make sense. I mean, you know, Tony Romo does not play defense. Tony Romo did not give up 5 touchdowns in the second half. It was
And Tony Romo also does not have, aside from Jason Witten and Des Bryant, are obviously very good receivers, but what happened to Terrence Williams? Miles Austin is gone. No other receiver is stepping up. DeMarco Murray, in my opinion, is not being utilized by the head coach, Garrett. He, in some of these matchups, he's going up against terrible run defenses, and I believe he ought to be touching the ball a lot more, say like a Matt Forte in Chicago. And the game plan to me is a little bit backwards, and I put that on the head coach, but I really put that on Jerry Jones for saying, "Oh, this guy's coming back next year."
Well, I agree with you because look at what happened last week. Yeah, they were averaging over 7 yards a carry in the first half, and he only touched the ball 7 times. 7 run plays out of 29 plays. You're trying to eat the clock and kill the clock and control the ball when you have a huge lead. And what are they doing? They're throwing the ball. I mean, it just doesn't make sense.
The Cowboys organization does not realize that DeMarco Murray, yes, granted, he's had his health problems. He has not been on the football field. You may not, one may not even call him a top-tier running back, but the truth of the matter is when that man is healthy, and especially when he's going up against a poor run defense, but when that man is healthy, DeMarco Murray, he is possibly one of the top running backs in football. He is a huge piece. He needs to be used.
Well, I tell you the other thing that is just infuriating to me as a Cowboys fan is when I hear other Cowboys fans say, "Yeah, well, you just wait. Sean Lee is the heart of that defense. When Sean Lee is in, that's a totally different defense." Well, guess what? It's been 2 years, and Sean Lee has played less than half a season in both of those years. So that's all great to think back to when Sean Lee's in the game, but while he's on the sideline, you've got to come up with something that's going to stop somebody. I mean,
and that's the biggest thing is the pass defense. I mean, it's kind of like the Ravens, really. I mean, yeah, Justin Tucker makes an amazing field goal. We're kind of, we're 8-6, but no doubt if the AFC were actually a legitimate. I mean, look at some of the top playoff teams right now in the AFC. I mean, aside from Denver and Kansas City, Indianapolis Colts, Cincinnati Bengals, Ravens, Patriots, really, it's really kind of a trash heap. I mean, I'll give the Ravens some credit, but if they were in the NFC, they wouldn't have a chance right now.
Well, I tell you what, with the AFC, like you just said, if your Ravens get in, they got a shot, Brian, because I think anyone has a shot.
Everybody has a shot. I mean, yeah, especially the fact that Peyton Manning can't play in the cold.
I mean, he loses. He loses
at
home, San Diego. Okay, San Diego. He loses at home. He loses to the Colts. I mean, so would any team getting upset, quote unquote, in the playoffs surprise you? It wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, the worst thing that could happen to Peyton is to have home field because it's going to be freezing.
For some reason, I don't really. I like Kansas City, but I don't like Kansas City. I mean, they get the job done really well against bad teams, but they haven't come anywhere near close beating the Broncos. I think if they play the Broncos in the playoffs, they're going to lose, and I don't really see them necessarily doing that well. Even they play Indianapolis this week. and they got that amazing defense. But it's not like every week it's an amazing defense. It's kind of a boom or bust defense. I don't think they're going to do that well against Indianapolis.
Right.
I'll go. I know we're going to do this in a little bit, but Indianapolis. A lot of people are not giving Andrew Luck a lot of credit right now, and I think this team, Indianapolis, like the Ravens, they just find a chance to win. I wouldn't be surprised when people think that Kansas City is going to roll into Indianapolis, win that game. I think Indianapolis is going to keep that thing close and win it.
Right. I wouldn't be surprised. It's one of those things where, like I said, and like you said, I mean, the AFC up for grabs, NFC whole different story. I mean, it's looking like Seattle is the cream of the crop. Of course, they take a stumbling loss against San Francisco, but that's one of those division games you kind of just say, okay, that happens.
I mean, what I really like there is the fact that Seattle, they lost that in San Francisco, the tight game in San Francisco. But what I like about Seattle's situation right now, they get that home field advantage. They're a much different team in that stadium in Seattle, the loudest stadium, possibly the biggest home crowd in football. I don't know if it's because of the coffee out there, maybe the legal recreational usage of some stuff out there that recently. I get on a tangent. Seattle, if they get the home field advantage, they lost that game in San Francisco. They get the home field advantage. I could see Seattle in the Super Bowl. I really do right now.
Well, let's not forget the piped-in sound. So,
Yeah.
That's just how it all goes, I guess. So now, if you look, as it sits right now, okay, the AFC first round buys would be the Broncos and Patriots. Okay, the AFC wild card would be the Ravens and the Bengals.
Right.
And then,
which is interesting because that could happen 2 weeks in a row. You could have a game where the Ravens might be playing the Bengals to win the division, in which case the Ravens could get a home game. I think the picture might change a lot. Right now, it would look like, those matchups. You could also have this outside chance possibility of Miami getting in the playoffs and possibly the Ravens getting in the playoffs and Cincinnati being the one on the outside.
Or the Patriots could be on the outside, couldn't they? Because
what I like about the Patriots right now, more so than any of the playoff contenders that are still kind of going for a spot, is they did what the Ravens did last year. As they are having some issues right now, and finding themselves, they have built sort of an equity in their record, and those 10 wins, those are big wins right now. Those are wins, extra wins there that teams like the Ravens, teams like the Bengals and the Dolphins wish they had. They have that equity in record, and I think that's helping them. They wanted to get possibly a bye and, things like that. But I think the Patriots' chances of holding on to a home game at this point are pretty strong.
Right, because they have the Ravens. They're at Ravens, and then they're home against the Bills to end it. Where, I mean, the Dolphins have a pretty interesting, end of the season. They've got the Bills and the Jets. So, the Bills, I'm going to give them a win there. The Jets, you never know what Jets team is going to show up.
Yeah, I'll tell you something. Jets and Andy, I'll even possibly disagree with you a little bit on the Bills there. The Bills, to me, are a team that has the chance to show up on any given Sunday. I don't find them to be like a bottom. I mean, they are a pretty bad team, but I don't find them to be such a bad team that they won't potentially, have the upside chance to challenge somebody. I can't believe people right now thinking Miami, it's a slam dunk that they're going to, they got the easiest schedule of any of these teams left. I mean, the Ravens have to play the Patriots, and then they have to play at Cincinnati. These are, playoff caliber opponents.
Right.
Miami doesn't have that, but I don't think these two games against the Jets, I mean, the AFC East is not good. However, I don't, like you said the Jets ain't going to be easy. I think Buffalo, don't be surprised that that one's not a little bit of a grudge match.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. Then, of course, in the NFC, you've got, it's a completely different picture where you've got the Seahawks and the Saints would have the bye. The wild card would be 49ers at the Eagles, which is unbelievable because the Eagles will win that disturbing division. And then the Panthers at the Bears, which is, those two you would almost have to think the road team would win both of those.
Well, the Bears right now, obviously they benefit from the Ravens beating the Lions last night. Right. That's big for them. McCown, I have to give Bears credit. They have a heck of a passing offense right now, two monster receivers, and Brendan Marshall, Alshon Jeffrey, whatever quarterback's throwing their way, be it Josh McCown has stepped in really nicely. You're talking about Kirk Cousins, how they're trying to get value for him, and I do believe there's value in these solid backup quarterbacks. Because look what McCown has done, stepping into that situation, kind of keeping Chicago afloat. Cutler, who I really don't like, comes in, but he still throws enough touchdowns. You still have a lot of battles, in some of those divisions.
Right. And then you've got your in the hunt are the Cardinals at 9-5, the Packers at 7-6, Detroit at 7-7. And then the Cowboys. Detroit, I believe, and the Cowboys both have to win the division in order to get in. I don't think they can. I don't think they can get a.
No, they're probably the Cowboys will probably need to. What is Philadelphia? Remind me real quick what Philadelphia's record is right now. They'd have to win all their games essentially, and I don't see it happening the way Nick Foles is playing right now.
Philadelphia is 8-6. Dallas is 7-7. So the scenario is that Philadelphia has to beat the Bears. And if Philadelphia beats the Bears and the Cowboys lose, they get it. If Philadelphia beats the Bears and loses to the Cowboys, and the Cowboys beat Washington, then the Cowboys are in. So,
and here's the problem with teams like Dallas, that they're in the NFC. The difference between the NFC and the AFC this year, teams right now that are in that same boat as Dallas is in have much easier schedules, and going up against lesser competition. You're talking about if you had to talk about the Ravens' chances versus Dallas' chances right now, the Ravens get to go up against teams like they don't face them, but they're competing against teams like Miami right now, Cincinnati. Those teams aren't even really that good. If anything, they have a lot of negatives. Cincinnati just got kind of destroyed by Pittsburgh recently. Unfortunately, Dallas is going up competing for a playoff spot. Teams like Philadelphia that have a major up era right now, they found a passing game. Their defense is even starting to play better. They got LaShawn McCoy, who's been a fresh of breath air probably for that running game. And they're going up against teams like Chicago, who, if a team like Chicago is in the AFC, they'd be running away possibly with a bye right now.
Right. So, look, the Cowboys have, they got to beat the Redskins. That's the bottom line. If they beat the Redskins, then they have to, they roll the dice on week.
I don't think there's going to be too much of a problem on that one.
It shouldn't be. If they're not fired up and ready on this Sunday.
I'm sorry, Andy. I'll tell you. I'll backtrack a little bit. I think it might be an issue because of the Dallas pass defense, and if Kirk Cousins, what Snyder wants, they let this guy fly, and he's trying to get a trade or something. And he's going to try to put up a bunch of points against Dallas. That could be a close game. I don't know if that's a slam dunk for the Cowboys there, even with everything on the line.
Right. Yeah. Who knows? It should be very interesting. and look, it'll all get very clear at the end, by the end of this week. There's Saturday games this week, right?
Wow, I don't remember a Saturday game since the Ravens marched into Dallas and played in that last game, played at the old Dallas Stadium, and I don't know if you remember Tashard Choice, but He might have been the wrong choice for the Cowboys that night because we had a little fun on the ground.
Right. Actually, there is not a Saturday game. I thought they did Saturday games. Each at the end once college
football.
I guess they've gone away from that completely, huh?
And Andy, I'm sure you would agree with me that really it'd be awesome if they had Saturday night games in general. I'm sure most people would rather watch that than college football, but I guess there are, I say that being from, we're both from a part of the country where college football is not nearly as big as it is in some other parts of the country, like in the southeast there.
Wait. What are you talking about, Brian? The Terps are going to the Military Bowl.
Oh yeah, I mean, hey, and we're going to the Big Ten and everything, and I do think it is possible that Terps one day, being in the Big Ten at some point, could challenge to be a team that could potentially have an upside of trying to be a BCS team. But right now, I mean, as far as there was 1 year, sorry to go on a college football tangent, but you talked about Saturday and why we can't have NFL games. But, this is the Beltway, boys. I guess we can touch on the Terps for 30 seconds, but I'm just going to say that, like, in the last 15 years, once they've been to the Orange Bowl because they won the ACC, and they had an amazing record, but they didn't come anywhere near beating Florida, who was a legitimate team. They didn't have Rex Grossman in, who was a huge college quarterback back then, obviously a joke in the NFL, but he was very good in college. He didn't even play in the beginning of that game. Florida still beat Maryland by a crazy amount of points. And I just don't – it's not as fun to follow a team that you really know doesn't have a chance for, like, a BCS berth.
I'll tell you what's most upsetting about this game, the Military Bowl to me, is that it's on a Friday afternoon. Gosh, they couldn't even give us a local bowl game that was not close to Shabbos. You know what I'm saying there, Brian?
College, trust me, Andy, I do know what you're saying. This is Israel Sports Radio, and following college football is not the easiest thing in the world, is it?
It is not. All right, we got about 2 minutes to wrap this segment up, so we're going to do this by just saying the Bus and Philly football will play in the finals for the Israel Sports Radio Fantasy Football League. They are the 3 and 4 seed. Yossi G and me, winner, were losers last week. We are the 1 and 2 seeds coming off the bye. Yossi G and I will match up in the consolation game, which, is very European to have a consolation game. There is a 5th place game between Hashem, which is scary to think, and you, Brian. So you will be playing in the 5th place game. And I congratulate.
Yes, it's tough to think, going up against Hashem, but I'm not too sure about that one. But I will say, I was talking to the international radio star, that's Ari Lewis himself, of Israel Sports Radio, and he was saying that no longer, Andy, can you call your team winner anymore because you just don't win.
Well, here's what I have to say about that. First of all, that comes from a guy who didn't make the playoffs. Second of all, once you're a winner, you're always a winner. And third of all, if I win next week, I end the season with a win. So very few people can say that. All right, that's how we're going to wrap this segment up. We're going to be right back. We're going to do our picks for next week, see how this all shakes out in my mind and in Brian's mind. You are listening to the Beltway Boys on Israel Sports Radio.
You're tuned in to the only all-sports talk network in the Middle East, IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Check out the Israel Sports Radio store by clicking on the store tab on IsraelSportsRadio.com. Great items such as t-shirts, hats, books, and much, much more. Price does include shipping, and we do ship throughout the entire world. All major credit cards are accepted to make your shopping experience easy and convenient. So once again, click on the store tab on www.israelsportsradio.com.
Broadcasting live from Israel.
IsraelSportsRadio.com.
All right, and welcome back to segment 2 of the Beltway Boys. Again, this is Andy Gershman, and I'm with the deepest voice in all of Baltimore sports, Brian Hoffman. Brian, nice, ready to go on these picks?
Oh, yeah. Let's get going on these picks. I think you got a little ground to make up, but don't just pick games because you got to make up ground,
Never do that.
If you go with my pick, you at least look okay.
I would never, ever do that. All right, we got some interesting matchups here. The league tries to get some good games as time goes on, and we are now done with Thursday night football. So let's go ahead and start with the two games that you and I are most interested in. The first game, a 1 o'clock, Dallas at Washington. Is there a way the Redskins win this game?
I mean, typically, Andy, I gotta statistically give like a 75% chance and go with the Dallas Cowboys to win this game. But watch out because Dallas got everything to play for. But, again, Dan Snyder trying to use Kirk Cousins as trade bait. Dallas is one of the worst pass defenses. So this could be one heck of a shootout. This could be somewhere in the tune of, not Jamal Charles territory of 56 points, but this could be like, 40 to 38, something like that. I don't think this is a shoo-in for Dallas, but I got to pick Dallas in this one because their intangibles are very serious to have to win this game.
All right, I'm going to go with Dallas also because I'm a homer, and so why not? The next game, of course, at 4:25. Now, maybe you can explain to me why this game is at 4:25. It's in Baltimore, New England at Baltimore. Why is this game being played?
Yeah, I heard this news. Like, I'm driving around, about to, get interested in the fact that I'm making plans for this to be a night game or whatever. It makes no sense because they wanted, maybe a couple of weeks ago, they thought a hotter game would be, it's Chicago against, is it the Lions? That they moved up to that primetime Sunday spot. I know Chicago is one of the two teams. I think the two teams from the NFC were,
It's Chicago and the Eagles.
Chicago and the Eagles, which is obviously right there, you have a huge playoff implications. But, Patriots and the Ravens, not like you have that less. If anything, maybe Goodell is making a move here to say, hey, the NFC is, much more legit football. It's kind of like a slap in the face to Robert Kraft, to Steve Bisciotti, the Patriots and Ravens organization. This would be a heck of a game to see on a Sunday night. Raise your hand out there if you'd rather see Chicago play the Eagles. No disrespect for the Eagles and the Bears, but they haven't done as much as the Patriots and the Ravens in recent years.
Well, not only that, if it's not going to be the night game, why isn't it a 1 o'clock game in Baltimore?
Unbelievable.
It's an East Coast game. I don't understand why it's a 4 o'clock game. But anyway, enough about that. You have two teams.
One of my biggest NFL surprises of the week, along with Hiroki Kuroda's agent being, it's a baseball thing, only getting 1 year, $16 million. I don't know what kind of sports management team's in charge of that. I go on a tangent. Next game, Andy?
No. All right, Eagles. New England and Baltimore. Who are you picking?
I got to go. It's going to be a homer pick. I'm going to go with the Ravens when I got a chance to. If we would have done last week's games, I would have gone Lions. I'm serious about that. People can trust me on that one. But when there's a game that I see the Ravens having a decent chance in, I remember Tom Brady just laying there on his tuchus, in the AFC Championship game after he was bewildered by a fierce Ravens pass rush. Doomerville should be 100% by this game, purple Kool-Aid. And Brady hasn't fared too well lately against the Ravens. So you also have a situation where we don't have Bernard Pollard anymore that laid Stephen Ridley out unconscious. The problem is Stephen Ridley's not really playing anyways. I'm happy that Gronk's not in there. You got Danny Amendola, Julian Edelman, a questionable offense, a questionable defense, and I think the Ravens have a really good shot at home of winning this game.
So this will be my Ari Lewis pick. I'm going to take the Ravens also. I think the Ravens have a lot more to play for here. I think New England is still trying to figure out its slant offense because they have nothing to go to. They're settling for field goals because Gronk was their big target in the end zone. And if you don't think that played a factor at the end of that Miami game, then you're not watching enough football. So I think Baltimore's going to win this game. I think they're going to continue to roll. But Baltimore needs to turn in some touchdowns also and not just field goals. Tucker was great last night, but they need to see 7 points on the board. They can't trade off 3s and 7s, that's for sure.
I am not concerned nearly as much of the New England pass rush as I am about guys like Dominic and Sue and the fierce Detroit rushing that was going on Flacco. I'm not so concerned about that this week.
All right, we shall see. All right, the next game, this one should be a quick no-brainer. Denver at Houston.
The question is over under for Denver, like 50 points. I mean, even Andrew Luck against a decent passing defense, the game in Indianapolis, is not even that good of a team. Just beat Houston 25-3, which is pathetic. So you can imagine that score should be just about double. So 25-3, 50-6.
50-6.
Or I mean, why am I giving Houston 6 is the question.
Yeah, I don't know what the score is going to be, but I think we can agree it's going to be Denver. So, let's keep going then. Tennessee at Jacksonville.
Tennessee still possibly has like a mathematical chance to creep in if a lot of teams lose. I mean, but it's so like outside. Have they officially been eliminated already?
I think they may have.
I mean, they'd have to like win out and have other teams lose like 2 games. I mean, Jacksonville's kind of playing an interest. I'll tell you something. No, now I start to think about this game. Tennessee has a decent passing defense, but a terrible run defense. Jacksonville will either be sporting Maurice Jones-Drew, who, if they're smart, will actually not play him because they have nothing to play for. Maurice Jones-Drew is not a guy I see the Jaguars bringing back. He's a guy who I don't know if he's in a contract year or not, but he certainly hasn't played to a level of money, but there is still like a benefit to keeping him healthy for all sides. And you have this Todman, who's actually MJD's backup, who actually did a fine job this week, and I expect him to absolutely demolish the Tennessee run defense, which is one of the worst in the league. I actually have a fantasy decision to make whether I want to go with Todman over a guy like Andrew Luck, who's facing a difficult Kansas City defense that seems to have 3 defensive touchdowns every week.
Have you picked this game yet or not?
I'm going to go ahead and pick Jacksonville because I expect Todman to destroy the Tennessee run defense.
All right, I'm going to stick with Tennessee on this one.
Okay.
I think that, but neither team has anything to really play for, so who knows? All right. Yeah. This could be a great game, but so many of these great games have ended up not being great games. But you have New Orleans at Carolina.
New Orleans really laid an egg this week with the St. Louis situation. both teams, this could be, these are two marquee playoff teams in the NFC. I like what Cam Newton, New Orleans has a problem with their run defense. That's their Achilles heel. But they took care of Carolina last time they played them. That game, I believe, was in New Orleans. This one, if I'm correct, is in Carolina?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to give this, just like San Francisco beat Seattle in San Francisco, I'm also going to give like a little nod like that in a 16-13 type of game between these teams in Carolina, a defensive game in which Carolina will show themselves in this one.
Well, if Carolina wins this game, they clinch a playoff berth because of the Cardinals and the 49ers play the last game of the season. So Carolina automatically clinches.
It's very difficult to beat a team twice in one season within the same division, and I think New Orleans manhandled Cam Newton last time inside of that dome, but I think Carolina will take care of business at home. Be a little switcheroo there.
Another meaningless game. We've got a few of them this week. Cleveland at the Jets.
The Jets have a terrible pass defense, and Cleveland has Josh Gordon. I think that's going to be the X factor. I'm going to give this game to Cleveland. I think they're going to put up some points here.
All right, this will be one of my picks where I'm just going against you just because.
Okay.
I'll pick the Jets. I hate the Jets. Everyone knows I hate the Jets, but I need to pick up some ground here. I've only got 2 weeks left, and I'm behind by 42 games.
Absolutely, and there's no way I'm going to pick the Jets, so there's an opportunity for you.
All right, Tampa Bay at St. Louis.
This is an interesting game because I have Zach Stacy in a fantasy championship, and I need him to do well in what will actually be quite a decently difficult matchup against an underrated Tampa Bay defense. Am I going to predict with some Zach Stacy Kool-Aid? I mean, look what St. Louis did to a larger team in the Saints, and I think maybe they sort of just let it ride and continue that on and win this week as well with Zach Stacy, who I think is the top emerging blue chip. He's a rookie, amazing as a result of injuries. He steps in, and he's had some injury bouts late in the season, but what he was able to do and show the world that the Saints are good, but they're not so good because they have this Achilles heel in their run defense. And the run defense in Tampa Bay is pretty decent. They do have Revis Island, but they don't have a heck of a lot to play for. Neither does St. Louis, honestly. But I'm going to kind of pull for St. Louis here, and I'm going to kind of pick them in my heart as well.
All right, I'll go Tampa Bay.
Okay, yeah, it makes sense, right?
All right, this is a great game here. The Indianapolis Colts at Kansas City. This could be a playoff preview also.
I picked this earlier. I'm going to keep my money where my mouth is, and although I expect that people will be all over Kansas City here, I'm going to pick Indianapolis just because, like the Ravens, the Colts are a strange team. They have a quarterback who doesn't have a lot going for him. He has a terrible O-line, a bad running game. I think the running game, actually, like the Ravens, is bad. These running backs are bad as a result of the O-line. In Indianapolis, Luck is being even more affected because he's always on the ground. He doesn't even have Reggie Wayne. T.Y. Hilton is inconsistent. You got these guys that step up, like Derek Rogers and Levon Brazil and Kobe Fleener, his roommate from Stanford. And he always seems to just kind of get the job done. Trent Richardson finally did something this week. I mean, be it was against a terrible run defense there. I don't think he's going to do a heck of a lot this week. But I see Indianapolis keeping it closer than people think. Andrew Luck having a good game and winning this game for the Colts.
All right, I'm going to I hear what you're saying. I'm going to go Kansas City. I like the home field in this situation. It's going to be cold. It's going to be miserable. I'm still not trusting T.Y. Hilton and gang. I think that you've seen so many times where a guy that was the number two, number three receiver, he was that for a reason. I don't think that their passing game um, will be able to handle this Kansas City defense, and I think at home Kansas City wins this game.
I would have 100% agreed with you a few weeks ago, Andy. But if you've noticed lately, Kansas City has actually been giving up. I mean, last week they had some amazing stuff going on. It's defensive touchdowns and special teams touchdowns. They have a knack for doing that. But I believe their defense taking a major hit against the quarterback. They had their two ends both go out a few weeks ago. I don't know, exactly, what that situation there is. I believe a team has more chance to score more points against the Chiefs now than they did about 6 weeks back. And I believe this is one of the reasons why the Denver Broncos were able to easily roll over the Chiefs. It's because they were dealing with some major defensive issues, which is interesting because they've been the best defensive team in football this season, especially as far as like turnovers and touchdowns are concerned. But at the same time, they're giving up a lot more points now than they used to, than they were just a few weeks ago. And you're right, Indianapolis, they don't have a running game to turn to.
Right.
But Andrew Luck, he's sort of magical in the way he kind of comes back in games. These receivers for them seem to pop up. And I don't know. I'm just calling it my crazy pick of the week.
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if Kansas City, makes Indianapolis one-dimensional, and this could possibly be an annihilation. But I'm going to just tell people there, maybe it's just me giving a little bit of credit this year to the Colts and saying they should have a lot worse record than they do.
Okay. I mean, I hear everything you're saying. That will be a good one for us to keep an eye on. Okay. Now, Minnesota, coming off a big win against Philly, goes to Cincinnati, a team that you have some interest in.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm going to be pulling for Minnesota. I mean, it looks like these days, Minnesota, a bunch of weeks back, was considered one of the worst teams in football that happened to have the MVP from last season. And even though he's injured right now and his backup gets 3 touchdowns this week, I think they might have had 4 touchdowns on the ground altogether, and really pulled a shocker. Greg Jennings has a really good reputation, a rapport, with Castle there, and it seems to be the only quarterback in Minnesota who's actually decently working after the jokes of Josh Freeman and Christian Ponder's decent, but he keeps getting injured. But I don't like Minnesota in this game. I think their passing defense ultimately is weak. They got away last week with playing a team. The way to beat Philadelphia is you can keep up with them and throw in the air. They have a weak passing defense, and I think so too should the passing defense be a problem for Philadelphia this week as well.
All right, so I think Cincinnati rolls all over them in this game. I think that was, Minnesota does this every few weeks, but in between they've been horrible. So I
think A.J. Green, Giovanni Bernard are going to be guys you're going to want to play. I think Minnesota, they might have surprised some people, but I think it was a 1-week wonder, and I think Cincinnati is going to roll over Minnesota. Cincinnati has a very decent passing defense. I think the Castle to Jennings hookup thing of like 12 targets for 170 yards, I don't think that's going to happen this week for Minnesota.
Oh, okay. All right, let's move on. We have a few more games, and we only have a few more minutes. So Minnesota at Buffalo. Miami at Buffalo, a game where Miami needs to win to keep their hopes alive. What are you thinking there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go ahead and pick the Dolphins here, even though I think the Bills have a chance to upset them this week. But I'm going to go ahead and pick the Dolphins.
You know what? I'm going to go Bills. I'm going to go with my Kansas City theory on 2 teams that aren't that good. I think that last week could have been Miami's Super Bowl. The way they reacted after beating the Patriots, I think they were a little too excited. Bills, I think, like you said, they're not an awful team. It's going to be freezing, that's for sure. And
I'll tell you something. If the Bills win this game, Andy, I'm going to go ahead and sing you happy birthday over the phone or in person. I'm going to come down to D.C. Silver Straw. I'm going to personally do a sing-a-gram, a singing birthday. If the Buffalo Bills upset Cincinnati, I will do you that favor, sir.
all right, well, unfortunately, my birthday is not till September, so I have to wait a while. But
We will get this taken care of. That'll make the situation very good for the Ravens.
okay. Next one is Arizona at Seattle. Arizona needs this game. I'm not sure anyone beats Seattle and Seattle.
No, I'm going Seattle here.
Yeah, I'm going Seattle too. I think this is the dagger for Arizona and done. Two teams that I'm sure had much higher hopes, maybe not as much as the Super Bowl, but probably didn't think they'd each be in this situation. New York at Detroit.
And this is the other New York, the team I actually don't hate as much as the Jets, right?
That would be right.
The Giants and the Lions, and this game is being played in Detroit or in the place where they're going to play the Super Bowl this year.
And Detroit, not the place where it will be snowing on Super Bowl Sunday.
Is there going to be 6 inches of snow in the Meadowlands? Is it going to look like that game at Lincoln Financial in Philadelphia?
I hope so. All right, who do you pick?
Okay, hold on real quick. I go into tangents. We're talking about the Lions and the Giants. I got to go to the Lions here. I mean, also I got Reggie Bush going in my fantasy championship this week, and I need him to perform along with Calvin Johnson. I hope Calvin Johnson is mad because the Ravens went into a game plan of letting him catch the ball, but hitting him hard and playing physical with him once he caught the ball. The guy was blasting him all week, Matt Elam, the safety out of Florida that we drafted this year, actually had the last laugh against Megatron with an interception at the end of the game. But I think the Lions are going to be really mad as a result of that, and they're going to have a destruction. They're going to this one's not going to be close, Andy.
All right, Raiders at Chargers.
Chargers have to win this game,
Yeah.
and I'm going to go with the Chargers on that. I like the way Ryan Matthews is playing right now on the ground for them.
Yeah. Pittsburgh at Green Bay.
Somehow I got to think Pittsburgh's going to win this game. Green Bay is hurt in a lot of areas. I mean, obviously, if Aaron Rodgers comes back, a different situation. Pittsburgh's going to stop Eddie Lacy. And they do enough, and Green Bay has that horrible pass defense. I think I might need to change my kicker, Mason Crosby. I don't think he's going to get enough into decent field goal range this week. I think Pittsburgh's going to put on a defensive show this week against the Packers.
Maybe it's the bad taste of the bratwurst from last Sunday, but I'm going to take Green Bay in this. I think, and actually, I'll be honest, this is the one you tricked me on. I penciled you in for Green Bay. And I'm a little surprised on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I had to think about it too. I mean, what do you think, like for you, would the X factor be? I mean, if there's one place where Green Bay can beat Pittsburgh, it's in the air. So if they can give, that quarterback, I don't know, maybe Tolzien, Matt Flynn, Matt Flynn, I guess, and maybe Matt Flynn's getting kind of better too. I mean, he's a lot better now than he was over Thanksgiving, and if they can beat Pittsburgh in the air, I'm just concerned because I think Eddie Lacy. I mean, this is going to be a big challenge for Eddie Lacy this week. I mean, this is not an amazing Pittsburgh run defense, but if Eddie Lacy shows up this week, watch out. I mean, going forward to next year, regardless of what happens with the Packers this year with Aaron Rodgers and everything. Combination of Eddie Lacy and Aaron Rodgers moving forward could be very interesting. The team, they just got to learn how to protect the quarterback. They really got to start investing, as do the Ravens, into an offensive line.
Right. All right. Next up is is the Sunday night game, Chicago at Philly. We've touched on this game. Philly needs this. Both teams need this. Chicago needs this. Where are you going with this one?
I think Chicago wins this. I think they do because I think whatever quarterback they throw out, it's probably Cutler, and I don't wish harm on anybody, but I think Cutler will probably go out after the first half, and McCown will come in for a second half, but it won't matter because Alshon Jeffrey, Brennan Marshall, Martellus Bennett, these are monster receivers. Philadelphia doesn't have a good enough pass defense. I think Marshall will just have his time with this defense. And then you got Forte, and that's what makes the Chicago so good. They kind of remind me a little bit of their defense, their run game. Chicago's run defense is terrible, which is why I don't think they're going to go deep in the playoffs. They're going to lose to a team eventually like a Seattle. But their offense is amazing because they have these huge weapons in their passing game. But then I said St. Louis Rams, Marshall Faulk, the greatest show on turf, Kurt Warner, Hakeem, Isaac Bruce, all these guys there. Kind of reminds me of that because you didn't know where you were going to go. You're going to go in the air, you're going to go to Marshall Faulk. You're going to go to a Hall of Famer one way or another.
Exactly. All right, I'm going to go Chicago also. This could be a heart pick, but I need Chicago here. I'm going to take Chicago. The last game, Monday night, probably a no-brainer in my mind. Atlanta at San Francisco. I don't see how Atlanta wins. Atlanta is a shell. They did beat the Redskins, but talking about a team going nowhere fast. So I'm going to take San Francisco. I think at home, well-rounded team. Any question in your mind?
No, I mean, this would have been an interesting game had things, held serve with Julio Jones, Roddy White. Now he's starting to come on, but it's definitely too little too late. Julio Jones went out early. Atlanta also has a terrible defense, and just the combination of those couple of things, Atlanta's gotten better recently, and it's been because their passing game has gotten better with Roddy White coming back strong, and it's even made Tony Gonzalez more effective, and it's even made the running game a little bit more effective with Steven Jackson, one of the biggest joke pickups for them in the offseason. Wasn't even necessary. The guy's done nothing this season, but he did okay last week. But, no, Atlanta's going to get squashed this week, and, they got some opportunity next year to do something. Julio Jones will be coming back. They really got to pace up that defense, get a couple playmakers on the defensive side if they want a chance to compete with some of these other teams. Right. Defense wins championships.
Yeah, that's what I hear. All right.
I know from experience.
All right, that's our picks, and that's going to pretty much wrap it up for this week's episode of the Beltway Boys. I look forward to picking up a few games on you this week, hopefully, and, doing this again next week. For Brian Hoffman, this is Andy Gershman on Israel Sports Radio. You've been listening to the Beltway Boys. Good night.
Building love of Israel, one sports fan at a time. IsraelSportsRadio.com.